Hi, we're moving into our blog post on assessment. This is one of the blogs that I took a lead on that, at first I was really resistant to doing because in early childhood education in Indigenous lands, assessment has always been fairly negative. And child development checklists and age appropriate DAP, prescribed assessment materials often are not sensitive to culture, and so lots of gaps, and I've had a lot of I guess not so pleasant experiences with assessment in early childhood education. But as I got going, we have evolved. And once I started digging in, assessment in EC is more about the funds of knowledge that children are bringing into our programs and the families, and how we're engaging with, the knowledge that the children and families are bringing to our programs. And it is definitely a social cultural perspective. And what happened at the end of this blog, I was able to get permission and share a Indigenous learning story from one of my previous educators. And she talks about Creedon's Day fishing. And this learning story was done as an assignment for one of my courses a few years ago. And it shows the funds of knowledge in local place. And it talks about some of the cultural protocols with fishing and ice fishing and taking care of the land, and also the patience and the determination it takes to wait for your fish, and to all the processes that are involved in ice fishing. And it's a really sweet story, and it has a clear picture of how the funds of knowledge have come into play, culture, and how Creedon can also take that assessment of his experience and share with his families through the learning story. That's pretty much what I had to say on that topic.
And so I've moved into more assessments like that, but at the beginning of my teaching practice, I had moved to London, England, and the teaching over there was certainly a lot different. But in terms of the assessment portions of my job, it was very rigid. They have checklists, they have very, I'd like to call intense examinations that they need to have on that developmentally appropriate practice. So I found myself really teaching to a test rather than teaching for a holistic understanding or having a development of knowledge being utilized in my classroom. So it became a bit of a damaging structure. It was more for marks and for funding rather than for an actual progression of learning. And it really did not take into account a lot of exceptionalities in the classroom. So different
individual,
different students that may be dealing with autism or different learning exceptionalities. It was not really encompassing of them. So when I moved away from that, when I came back to Canada and I was working up north, I was able to apply that type of assessment where I was speaking more about the growth that I had seen in that student based on when I had first met them to where they were in the course, whether it was the first report card, second report card, or at the end of the school year. So I was able to paint more of a picture of the learning development of my student rather than if they had gotten a certain percentage on a certain assignment. And that type of assessment is more well received by the parents that I had given it to, because they were able to actually read exactly where I had my opinions, my professional opinions about where that student was developmentally and how they evolved through the duration of my classroom. And it was very well received. It wasn't just a numerical mark of what I had pointed to as their development and their learning process. It was more of a story, as you had mentioned. And that type of assessment is just profoundly better, in my opinion.
Yes. I'm happy to see a shift. I know it's not everywhere, but there is a shift in EC for sure. And it's connected to the funds of knowledge that the children are bringing in and seeing them more as an individual. So, thank you.
Thanks. And perhaps in the comments below, you want to tell us a bit about your experience with assessment, how you're trying to shake it up, or are you still stuck in those old numerical systems? And what kind of goals do you have towards that? Or do you see value in consistently keeping it as a numerical data? We would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.